Good evening, Broncos country. We are live. Before we get started with tonight's great discussion, we want to make sure we have all of our platforms included. And this is an all inclusive platform. Don't want to leave anybody out. All right. Looks like I see green check marks across the board, and we are good. Welcome in again. I am one of your hosts, Ron White. On that side of me, you know him, you love him, as Dylan Vaughn Arks. Dylan, how are you doing today on this nice Saturday, my guy?
Fantastic. Up in Northern California, we're getting a lot of rain dumping on us, but it taking out my internet. But it's calmed down today, so we're gonna be smooth sailing, and I'm ready for one of the most underrated holidays, Thanksgiving. I'm a big eater, man. I love to eat. I'm a skinnier guy, but I love to eat.
Yeah, I do too. It just came up so suddenly for me. Like I'm like, wow, it just turned November and now we're approaching Thanksgiving here next week, and Christmas will be here in a blink of an eye. So it's it's crazy, but I'm with you. I love to eat. I love being with the family and enjoying watching football. Although the Broncos aren't going to be playing on Thanksgiving, but it's nonetheless watching the good matchups. All right, let's see who we have in tonight. Just want to say a few highs here. We got Mr. David Youngkin coming in. Thank you, David. You know we always appreciate you, my guy. He says, "Evening, everyone. Hope the Broncos keep the momentum going from the win over the Falcons last week. Have a great show tonight and a great weekend, everyone. I hope you have a great weekend as well, David. And again, thank you for coming in. Yeah, the 6-5 Broncos do need to keep this momentum going, especially as they geared toward this playoff push here, Dylan. The schedule, which we'll get into here shortly, guys, does seem to be very favorable for the Broncos coming up. So if they can keep that winning vibe going into the next several matchups, they should definitely be um, getting to the playoffs. Thank you again.
Always good to see you, David.
Yep. All right, and we got Mr. David McElrath, Papa Bear. Thank you, David, for coming in. We always appreciate you too, my guy. He says, "Good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag 10-7 with the plus. Hashtag let's go, Bo. Thank you for your support, your generosity, David. It means a lot to us. And yeah, this 10-7, it's looking more realistic, as we go on through the weeks. So yeah, it's again, it's definitely not out of the realm of the possible, given where the Broncos are and where some of the other teams behind the Broncos are. I definitely think a 10-7 record, maybe even 11-6, depending how it all shakes out. It's definitely feasible. But again, I commend you because you've been with that since the beginning. You've been with a winning record since the beginning of the season. So it's good that that's kind of coming to fruition for you. But again, thank you for coming in, David.
Yeah, good to see you, David. Thanks for coming in as always. And yeah, man, if you would have told me we were gonna have anything close to 10-7 and possibly a playoff berth, I would have called you crazy. A lot of moving pieces on this offense. Very young. Obviously, you have a rookie quarterback. Offensive line's great, but the weapons pretty inconsistent. But man, this and not just the offense, the defense as well has been just an anomaly. I couldn't believe how good they are so far. But yeah, it's just awesome to see where this team has come, even with all these roadblocks.
Yeah, and just to think, Dylan, we were here during the summer and in preseason, just you know, emphasizing how this is a rebuilding year. And to take nothing away from that, it still is to a degree. But the success that this team is having, as you mentioned, on all three sides of the ball, it's such a great thing to see. It's just so encouraging, and to end that to have an exclamation, point after the season with a playoff berth. I mean, it just would, be very valuable for this team. So it's a good thing to see. Again, thank you, David, for coming in. All right, let's see who else we have here. Got Mr. Todd Ostendorf coming in. Hello, Broncos country. Hello to you too, Todd. Thank you for coming in, my guy. It's always good to see you. Always good to see you. And he also has the Broncos going 7-5. He's predicting that 10-7 as well. Okay. So I do see a lot of 10-7s here. So yeah, again, I love it. I love it. I love it. All righty. Let's see here. What else we have? We got Mr. Mike S coming in. Thank you, Mike, for showing up. We appreciate you, my guy, as always. He says, "What's up, Dylan, Ron, Scott, and the Broncos country? What is up with you, Mike? Thank you for coming in, my guy. We appreciate you as always. Hopefully, you're having a great day and a great weekend." All right, Dylan. So, want to get your thoughts here before we get to um, the schedule. Obviously, there's been some tidbits that have come up here as it pertains to news in Broncos country over the past week. Um, so one game has been flexed into Thursday night football for your Denver Broncos. So that is the Broncos matchup with the Los Angeles Chargers at SoFi Stadium. So that was originally scheduled for December 22nd. Now that's been moved to Thursday night. So I think Amazon has it on Thursday night football on the 19th of December. And now that flexes the Bengals out because the Bengals were supposed to really have that. That flexes the Bengals out, puts the Broncos in, and that gives more rest for your Broncos. So a few extra days to prepare for their next matchup in Cincinnati. So, Dylan, what are your thoughts there? I know Sean Payton, obviously he had to sign off on this because, no team can have two Thursday night games. So obviously the Peyton and obviously Walter Penner groups and all were okay with the move. So I guess what are your thoughts and what are the implications as it pertains to this flex?
I think it's a really interesting move. Obviously, us as fans are excited to see Broncos in prime time. Not everyone can get the game in their region, but now a Thursday night game, another prime time game, another chance for Bo Nix and the offense to show, hey, I'm in this offensive rookie of the year conversation. Hey, take a look at what I'm doing. Obviously, against a divisional opponent like the Chargers, who have done very well under Harbaugh there, it's going to be tough to do a short week, but I guess you could see that in a good light in terms of, we play the Chargers twice a year. We've played them once already. Don't want to say they need less prep, but I could see it that way for sure. But also, I think the Bengals are a tough out despite their record. Joe Burrow is playing amazing. Jamar Chase, insane. And T. Higgins, when healthy, is very tough. And to have a bigger break in between that game, I think, is very advantageous. And you're simultaneously making their week shorter to prepare for the Broncos. So I think it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think this move clearly suggests that moving forward, the Broncos are no longer underdogs. Speaking of underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are already playing on underdog. With their pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on two or more players' statistics, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with underdog.
With their champs game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 220 and a half passing yards this week? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
So download the Underdog app today and use code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York. Call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Yes. So, shout out to Underdog. I think what this Thursday night flex does, Dylan, and you've hit it on the head, but a few things. It puts Bo Nix into even a greater spotlight. You know, the odds for offensive rookie of the year, they're quite close. I think, Bo Nix is right there neck and neck with Jaden Daniels. But I think part of the problem was, at the start of the season, Jaden Daniels was on prime time more. Jaden Daniels came out to this hot start, and now he's cooled off a bit, just a little bit. I know part of that might be because of that rib injury he's dealing with. So he's kind of settled in. He's faced some tougher defenses here over the past several weeks. So the numbers aren't as good as they were to start. But now you have Bo Nix on the up, ascending. And that's kind of been the narrative now. It's the NFL now is really keying in on, Bo Nix and what the Broncos are doing. And this puts an even bigger spotlight on Bo Nix. And not only just Bo Nix, but the team. We know as fans that the Broncos defense is championship caliber. And the special teams is also doing well. And now to have, your rookie quarterback, on a big stage, already performing well, and now being noticed by even more viewers, I think that helps the Broncos case. In addition to that, it also helps with some of the playoff implications, kind of putting that as well, because we know the Chargers are already in playoff position, sitting at 7-3. Broncos are right there behind it, and it is a divisional matchup. So it also kind of puts that in the forefront. And, depending on the outcome of the game, and how some of these other games stack up, it can maybe be well for the Broncos and maybe move them up a spot within that seating. Again, depends on how it goes, but I like it. Sean Payton obviously likes it as well, and I just think it'll be very good, for this Broncos team, especially Bo Nix moving forward.
Yeah, and you consider as well, the one primetime game the Broncos had was against the Saints, and although a win, Bo didn't have an amazing showing. I think a lot of people just think of that pass that he kind of sailed in between two Broncos receivers. So I think that's kind of what people left their minds at when it comes to Bo Nix. Like, okay, we're just going to put that on the back burner. We don't really care about Bo. This is what he is right now. He's not going to really show up for the rest of the season. And after last week's win, I think people are starting to turn their heads and be like, hey, maybe this guy is pretty good. And they look at the stats and like, oh, he's leading in every category just about. So he is definitely in that conversation. There's no more question about that.
Correct. Exactly. All righty. Let's see who else has popped in the chat here. We got DB94 coming in. Thank you. We appreciate it. He says, let's get a big dub tomorrow, then get ready for the Browns in prime time. Yes, yes, DB94. That's the goal, to just keep stacking these wins. Um, again, we'll get to the schedule here shortly, but this is an inferior opponent, although a divisional game, and we know how those can go, Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just saw on Thursday night what happened with the Steelers and the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
So these divisional games are a little bit more challenging because obviously the opponents know one another very well. But given kind of where this Raiders team is currently, there really should be any excuse. There shouldn't be an excuse for the Broncos to not win this game.
Yeah, the Raiders are in the basement where they should be. I don't like them. I don't need to see them, except for when we beat their butts, on television. But it's, you mentioned the Browns beating the Steelers. How about them beating the Ravens just a couple of weeks earlier as well? Can't underestimate any opponent. I know it's the Raiders, and they're looking pretty miserable, and now they don't have Devontae Adams. He didn't play last game, but they just have less options in general, whether it be offense or defense. But the Broncos need to treat every game going forward, I don't care who it is, like it's a playoff game. Obviously, a lot of these guys, most of them, if not all of them, have not been to a playoff game, but they need to get themselves that mentality like, hey, every game counts. It doesn't matter if it's the lowly Raiders or it's the freaking Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes, exactly. And Sean Payton said it best. There are only two players on the Raiders that you need to worry about. Number 98 and number 89. Those are the two players you need to focus it on. So that Max Crosby and Brock Bowers, that those are the ones that could, maybe cause some problems. But I do think, the offensive line of the Broncos will have an answer for Max Crosby, and I do think Vance Joseph's going to, kind of look at that defensive game plan, and I'm pretty sure they're going to see more PS2 on number 89. So, and then DB94 coming back in. Bo Nix and this team are right on schedule. Me 10-7, 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. DB94, I would argue to say they're ahead of schedule. This team is ahead of schedule because, again, coming in, Vegas had the line for the number of games at 5.5, 5.5. So the fact that they're now over that, and again, looking at the schedule coming up, they have a chance to get to 10 wins with a rookie quarterback eating all this money from the Russell Wilson contract. You have to look at it and be like, that this team is exceeding expectations. As far as the stat line is concerned, yes, I think this is, probably a reasonable stat line when it comes to Bo Nix, probably for the season. I think he's at 14 passing touchdowns now, I believe, and 6 picks.
Yep.
I think it's 19 total when you add in the rushing and I think that receiving touchdown that he had in Baltimore. But yeah, I would say DB94, that's a very reasonable season stat line for Knicks. But yeah, they're ahead of schedule. They're exceeding expectations as far as I'm concerned.
100%. I mentioned it a little earlier. With the weapons they have, how inconsistent they've been, obviously you're going to get some reinforcements here pretty soon. Is Josh Reynolds playing tomorrow, I believe?
No, he's out.
He's not? He's still out? Mm-hmm. Either way, that's another addition to the offense, someone they paid money to bring in the offseason. But the emergence of Mims, hey, let's get creative. Let's put him in the backfield. Let's just say, hey, you know what? We're going to simplify things. Hey, we want you to go out on a wheel route. All you got to do is beat this guy and catch the ball. But, it's nice to see them using his speed and adding another dimension to this offense, whether he gets 5 to 8 snaps. It changes the dynamic and makes teams really think once he's on the field, okay, what are we going to be looking out for? And hopefully that adds more to Bo Nix, and it will. I believe 25 passing touchdowns. That's not out of the realm of possibility. 3K yards, definitely. And speaking of underdog earlier, if you bet the over on the wins, that's free money there. I mean, I think most of us had them at the very least 6 wins, so
Mm-hmm.
that's easy money right there.
Yeah, and you bring up Mims. I love what Peyton is doing with Mims. Just how they're using him kind of as that decoy. Like he could be line up your
Right.
running back, use him in motion. And you saw a lot of those motions, even with the screenplay that they had against the Falcons. Um, there were a few plays him coming out of the backfield. I think it was on that third down. Um, in the Atlanta game. So yeah, I like what they're doing with Mims, and Franklin's getting involved as well, Dylan, which I like. Sutton's going to Sutton. Don't have to really say anything there. But this offense is really coming together, and as a Broncos fans, you should be encouraged for sure. All righty. So I do see some folks in here talking about the Ravens and the Chargers. Who do they want to win in the matchup on Monday? Yeah, I don't. Um, yeah, this is an interesting one. I would like the Ravens and the Chargers to lose, but more so the Ravens because the Chargers aren't that much of a rival. Yeah, I mean, I think both of their schedules are very. They're tough. I know the Ravens they'll have a game with the Steelers. Um, they have an Eagles matchup as well. So I think the Ravens can definitely, and this game with the Chargers on Monday isn't going to be easy either. So the Ravens are going to have a tough one, and then the Chargers. I think the Chargers have the Chiefs again. Um, and so it's shaping up to be not as easy down the stretch for those teams. Now, as far as which one I would want to lose, I mean, I'll probably say the Chargers just because that's our rival. I never want your rival to to do better than you. Um but I think either way you may see some slippage from either one or both of those teams given the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think given that they're both 7-4 right now, I think I'd rather see the Chargers slip because the Ravens are playing great. I mean, they've lost a few right these past couple of weeks, but
Hmm.
they're playing great football, and I think they're gonna find their footing. They're gonna be fine. It's the Chargers in this division. Third place, that ain't good enough for me. Let's get to second. Really push Kansas City.
Hmm.
To be scared a little bit here, make them think, oh, maybe we do actually have to play our starters in the final week of the season. I'm excited to see the Harbaugh Bowl. I like those two great coaches. Um, I think the Chargers have gotten a bad rap. Obviously, they haven't been amazing for a long time now. I can think, like LT or and whatnot. But
Hmm.
Justin
Hmm.
Herbert has been a very underrated quarterback, and I know a lot of people disagreed for a while there. But you get the right coach paired with that quarterback. What are we seeing? Justin Herbert's absolutely killing it right now. So I don't think of them as the lowly Chargers anymore.
Yeah, you're right on the right coach with the right philosophy. Jim Harbaugh is going to come in and want to run the football. So they're heavy running team. Definitely using J.K. Dobbins there quite often, and then Justin Herbert play actioning off of that with a top defense. Think about this, guys. I believe they're still the number one defense, or if not number one, definitely top three. Um, but yeah, so it's going to be a challenge even on that Thursday night matchup with the Broncos. But all righty, so I think Dylan, now let's turn to the remaining schedule to see who else the Broncos have to play. Let me see if I can get it up here. Um, Give me 1 second. 1 second, guys.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny when I see super chats or chats coming and whatnot, and they're like, "Oh, good evening, Scott." And it's like, actually, just to break kayfabe here a little bit, Scott does actually not work Saturday nights. It's just us two bozos fumbling around trying to get stuff moving here in the
Yes.
background. So
Be
just be patient with us.
Yeah, yeah. No Mr. Producer on Saturdays anymore, guys. So yeah, it's just us kind of manning the ship, if you will. So just give us give us a minute.
And while you can get that up here in a second, Ron, I'll just pull up Phil here really quick, coming in with some stars. Says, "Good evening, Ron and Dylan. Wishing you guys a happy early Thanksgiving. What do you think about the change for the Thursday night game?" Well, talked about that a little earlier.
Hmm.
I think we're both pretty excited about it. We get another primetime game for the Broncos, another chance to show the NFL world what this team has, and more so what Bo Nix has. So should be awesome. Get a little more rest for the Bengals game. All around, pretty happy about it.
Yep, yep, Phil. I'm happy. Again, it gives you know the Broncos and Bo Nix that opportunity to shine on a big stage. The world can see it on prime time, and I think it will. Even if the Broncos come out with a loss on that game, I think Broncos fans will think and expect Bo Nix to play well um, in that game, and again, it should definitely kind of solidify kind of that trajectory and of kind of how Bo Nix is playing and him being that guy for the Broncos moving forward.
Definitely.
All right, so I do have the remainder of the schedule up. So again, guys, these are the opponents that do remain for the Denver Broncos. So as we touched on, the Broncos have their second meeting with their division rival and at Allegiant Stadium with the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, Dylan, for this one, I'm not too concerned. Um, I know the bugaboo out here is that the Broncos haven't won yet at Allegiant Stadium, but that should change tomorrow. I don't see the Broncos losing this game at all. Again, it may be a little tough because the familiarity with the opponent, but I think the Broncos come up with a win there.
Yeah, definitely. Depleted Raiders squad. Minshew's the quarterback. I've been joking with some buddies at work that maybe they should go and get some Daniel Jones love out there. Maybe that'll, I'd love to go if we're gonna go against doo doo ass quarterbacks. Might as well throw him in the ring.
You know what would be the funniest thing? If the Raiders are going to Raider, but this is the most Raider move to get a Daniel Jones and then to draft like a Carson Beck. I can
Oh
see that
my
happening.
god!
Like I can see like that is the most
Trying to
Raider
outsmart
thing to
everyone. Yeah.
happen. Oh man, it'll be hilarious. So yeah, guys, the Raiders I count as a dub. The Browns. Now I will say this one could be a little challenging as well, given what I saw Thursday night with the Steelers. But honestly, Dylan, I really think the Browns got their dander up because they don't like the Steelers. I really think that's what it was. I really think it's they wanted to prove a point. Obviously, Deshaun Watson is, out for the remainder of the season. And Jameis Winston, I love his comments. I like when he
Oh
talks.
yeah.
He's hilarious. Um, and Jameis Winston wanted to prove a point that he can still throw the football. Um, and so that was a game I think just because of the opponent that they really rose to the level of competition to that opponent. But I think, and Jerry Judy had a good game as well. Not to mention, Jerry
Yeah.
Judy had a good game on Thursday night. But I do think the matchup with the Broncos is going to be a different story. just because I think the secondary of the Broncos, in my opinion, it's better. Although Pittsburgh's secondary is still good, I still want to take our secondary, and I trust our defensive line as well to pressure Jameis Winston. There's also the familiarity with Peyton and Jameis too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are a lot of things stacking up in the Broncos' favor for this matchup, and I do have a victory for the Broncos on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement there. I do love Jameis Winston as well. He's quite the wordsmith before and after the game. Uh, but you know, the biggest problem obviously is going to be that Browns defense. They got some dogs there. Denzel
They
Ward's
do.
a beast, and Miles Garrett. Oh my God! I
Mm-hmm.
mean that 3 sacks the other night. It's just whoever he decides to line up against me, they might move him around a little bit, but they're going to have their hands full, and Bo Nix is going to have to do a good job of getting the ball out quick. And we've seen him elude some sacks here and there, but Miles Garrett, that's a different beast, man. That guy is an absolute monster off the edge.
Yeah, but I'm right there with you. But remember the matchup when Cleveland came to Denver last year,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a excellent game plan for the offensive line on Miles Garrett. I don't even think I heard maybe once
Mm-hmm.
Miles Garrett came through and registered a sack or a pressure. I don't remember the specifics that, but other than that, I think they neutralized Miles Garrett for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, he is a force. There's no denying the reigning defensive player of the year. There's no denying that. But I do think the Broncos are going to have a plan for him. And then Denzel Ward is good, but I think they have some other ones. Newsom, I think, is also
Mm-hmm.
in that secondary, but I'm not I'm not too concerned. I'm not that concerned here. Um, and then week 14, there's the bye. So late bye, but I think this comes at a great time. Um, get everyone healthy and again getting ready for this playoff push. And then week 15 with the Indianapolis Colts, another game at home. Um, I don't know how I feel about this one, Dylan. This one, this one, you really could go either way. Because the Colts are a better team than what their record indicates,
Mm-hmm.
and I know they had, that whole, I wouldn't call it an issue, but I guess it is an issue where, they had Richardson playing, then they benched him, for Flacco, and now Richardson's back in the lineup. So, but what I saw from Richardson last week against the Jets, he was dealing. He was good, and he kind of reminded you why he was picked number 4 overall in that draft a few years ago. So, um, and they have some players. They have, you know, Pittman and Josh Downs, and of course Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be easy, but I think the Broncos can get this one too. Again, it won't be easy, but I do think, you know the defense of the Colts don't really, make me nervous. Um, and obviously with our skill players and how Peyton can scheme it up, I think this can also be a win for the home team.
Yeah, I would chalk this one up as a win as well. Obviously, you're gonna go game by game. You don't want to jump ahead, but Anthony Richardson's still a very young quarterback, and he had limited time in college, and so coming to the NFL, he's a little more green. So his benching was. I get they were a little upset with some of the things that taking himself off the field or whatever, but he is a young quarterback who needs the reps. You don't just take him away from him. So, but I think the key to success in that game is defensively. You just have to make Anthony Richardson throw the ball. You got to contain him, and uh, in that Ravens game, Lamar didn't run around a whole lot, and he still carved you up. But I don't think Anthony Richardson is the passer that Lamar Jackson is. Um, but he is a threat, especially when you get to the red zone. So if you can make him sit in that pocket and really throw, I think that's going to be really advantageous for the Broncos, especially with Nick Bonito flashing off the edge, just absolutely killing it. Having obviously we talk so much about Bo Nix and the offense, and wow, how they've come around so much, and it's like, yeah, kind of underrated. Nick Bonito is tied for second, I believe, in sacks
Yes.
in the NFL. Like that's insane. I would have guessed, thinking from the time we drafted him and even through his rookie year, I was like, maybe he'll be a good rotational guy. And now it's like, oh, yeah, I think we might have found a starter there.
Yeah, and I believe he's right behind Henderson on the Bengals,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Um, but yeah, I'm right there with you in how the defensive line and how the edge players as a whole, Dylan. I mean that's another position group that that they're exceeding expectations. Now, we know what Jonathan Franklin Myers, was going to bring. We saw him with the Jets, and again, I told everyone that was the move of the offseason for me.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Allen is having a tremendous year, and I hope he's questionable. I do hope he can play in this game. It I was like, kind of did that when he popped up on that injury report there, but and Malcolm Roach, just at the nose stopping the run. I would say it's just been great, and Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito, just how Nick Bonito has improved, not only just with the sacks, but his ability in stopping the run. It's just been so good to see, just because he has the tools for it, and just kind of how he's built, like how he bends. It's just so good, and how he's coming up and just at the point of attack, just getting the sack. It's good to see. Um, so we'll get to the other matchups here, but I want to catch a few other folks here in the chat. We got Casey Nickel coming in with a super chat. Thank you, Casey. It means a lot to us here. He says, "It is my daughter's birthday tomorrow." Well, happy early birthday. Say hello, happy birthday. She will be 6, which means this could be her first ever seeing a winning season. Yes. We have our future quarterback, an amazing season no matter what. The future is bright. Amen, my brother. Amen. Amen. The future is bright. We, I'm going to go right out and say it, agreeing with you, Casey. Dylan, the drought, the quarterback, going wandering in the quarterback desert, it's over. It's over. It's done. The Broncos have their franchise quarterback. And again, we expected struggles at the beginning of the season. We were there for those struggles. But to just see how far he's come, to see some of the throws he's making, to see Dylan how he's commanding, kind of commanding at the line of scrimmage, going through his checks, seeing where the pressure is coming from, making all the calls in conjunction with the center, and just seeing the field. It's just, and as a rookie, obviously the 61 starts in college did help. But we know the NFL is a whole different level. And at this level, to see how far he's come in such a short period of time, Broncos country could only be but encouraged. So yeah, Casey, I'm right there with you. The future is bright. And just think, Dylan, depending on how the season shakes out, and with their draft picks too coming, there are quite a few names, in the draft that I want the Broncos to look at. Ashton Genty being one, Luther Burden being another, Emeka Ibuka being another. So there are quite a few here. But yeah, Casey, to your point, it's just so good. It's just so good to see that we have our, franchise quarterback of the future. Thank you again for coming in.
Yeah, and first of all, Casey, happy birthday to your daughter tomorrow, belated, obviously. That's awesome. Good to see you're bringing your family into the game of football. We always love that. We always need more Broncos fans, authentic Broncos fans. We don't want them bandwagons. But yeah, first ever, her first ever winning season. Yeah, I do think we have the quarterback of the future. I don't want to crown anything yet, but it's looking pretty good, man. I'm maybe it's just from being hurt over the past almost 10 years. I'm like, oh, I don't want to pull that trigger yet. I don't want to say he is the guy, but it's looking really good, and the future is bright. And whether this team makes the playoffs or not, or if they do and they go one and done, this season's by far a success. Like the whole offseason, we were yapping about, oh, this is the rebuilding time. We'll kind of see how it goes. We'll get like a top 8, top 10 pick, and we can really build this roster. And it's like, oh, actually, with the right coaching and quarterback and defense as well, this team can go far. And just imagine when we can add more weapons, whether through free agency or the draft. It's an exciting time for Broncos fans across the world.
Yes. Yes, most definitely. All right, looking at the chat here, do we have? I'm seeing something in the comments here, Dylan, about not the Facebook stars. Are we still having?
Oh no, they're good. We were just
Had a little issue, but now we're good to
yeah,
go.
it's all good now. I believe
Okay,
we're
okay.
caught up on those.
Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I know Facebook was having problems, but looks like we're good to go now. But thank you for mentioning it to us. All right, let's see who else we have here in the chat. Again, just give us a second here. Um, just here, yeah, Pro 16K, Sertan is gonna. Oh, when the Cleveland Browns come, yeah. So again, for these matchups, coming up, again, expect a lot of PS2 on Brock Bowers. Expect a lot of PS2 on Jerry Judy, and after the bye, expect. No, they may switch it up for the Colts. It might even be Pittman or Mitchell. I know Pierce is there as well.
Josh Downs.
Josh Downs, right? So Joseph may mix it up there because they do have quite a lot there at the receiving position. But yeah, yes. Thank you. And then Phil comes in. I don't know if the Colts have had their bye week or not yet. I don't think they have because they have. I think their record is 5-6.
I believe it looks like they are also week 14.
Oh, they're the same. Okay.
Wow. So yeah, it's going to be neutral going into into that game. Wow, crazy.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. And then Mr. Rodney Garcia coming in. Thank you, Rodney. Says Bengals is a tough one. Hendrickson and Hubert are beast. I see that one as a loss for us. So, Ronnie, getting back to that, let's go back to the schedule and we'll kind of give our takes on how we see the rest of the schedule going. So, the Los Angeles Chargers, we kind of talked about it earlier, but I don't know, Dylan. I think this one, I just, and I know the Broncos fans travel well to LA.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll have, the fan base on their side. But man, I just think the Chargers are playing some good football right now. And they have, that defense is ranked high for a reason, even higher than the Broncos. But I will say if the Broncos don't come out, flat on their foot like they did with the first matchup, then they'll have a chance in this game. Because, at one point when the Chargers were in Denver, it was 20-0. And, and I think that's probably when the offense still was trying to figure things out. But I still have a Chargers winning this one, unfortunately, just because, again, I think everyone's buying into that Jim Harbaugh philosophy. You mentioned, right, Herbert's playing well. And so I think and their defense is playing well, as I alluded to earlier. So I think given all of that, I do see a loss for the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, man. it's hard for me to pick the Broncos to win this. I honestly see it going either way, but like you mentioned, you have the Chargers who have arrived. Like they had that amazing game against the Bengals a week or so ago, and Herbert's a great quarterback. I've even like when he was coming out of college in Oregon, I was like, I think this guy's gonna be really good. And obviously, it's Chargers. They hired bum head coaches up until now, and they've just been uninspired for so long as a franchise. And you finally get Jim Harbaugh. It's like, oh great, we already have to deal with Andy Reid. Now we got Harbaugh in the division. I mean, when's the last time a division's had three Hall of Fame caliber head coaches, and then there's the Raiders. But it's insane. But back to the Chargers, yeah, the dominant run game. But like you mentioned, what worries me is that defense. You absolutely cannot get off to a cold start like you did last time. And obviously, the Broncos have found more ways to add new wrinkles to their offense to put the opposing defenses on their toes. But this is a very tough defense. You got Derwin James there. You got Bosa, Khalil Mack as well.
Mhm.
It's not going to be easy. And if I had to pick a game to lose it, I think this would probably be one of them. I have a hard time giving a definitive answer, to be honest.
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned, it could go either way because you know, what we're starting to see from Broncos is the offense start to open up, and you know, if they don't get off to that cold start, just make the game close in the fourth quarter, the Broncos have a chance to win this.
Mm-hmm.
But if they come out, you know, not moving the ball, going 3 and outs, the first quarter, then that nothing's really going to happen when it comes to the Broncos winning this game. So just depend on how it starts. Um, but yeah, that's going to be a tough one. So we have the Chargers there, and now the matchup with the Bengals. And again, this is in Cincinnati at Paycor Stadium. So I think this could go either way. I know I know a lot of folks are actually picking this as an L, and I see why. Because Dylan, if it were not for how bad Cincinnati's defense has been, the Bengals easily could have been the number one seed. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
They could have been the number one seed in the AFC. Joe Burrow is playing at an unbelievable level this year, and we're talking MVP numbers, guys. So, but that defense has just been horrible. Now they've kind of tightened up a little bit, however you want to quantify a little bit. We saw that, in that second half against the Chargers last week. But Jamar Chase is just going off. He's having a year. I think he has total of 12 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do think, I think PS2 can handle Chase one-on-one. And the offensive line of the Bengals isn't that great. So this is another game that the Broncos D-line can feast with Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers and Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. I say the Broncos pull out a victory in this one. I got the Broncos winning.
Okay.
I think it's going to be closer than you think.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, again, they'll have more time to rest and prepare. But I do see the Broncos pulling out a victory in this one.
Yeah, man, I agree there, because I think this defense can really get after Burrow. With, like you mentioned, the offensive line is pretty not so great, and just how well the Broncos have been with even just rushing with 4. But add on to that, we're like 45% blitz rate. That's insane. Mm-hmm. So they can do it with 4, and they can do it send in another guy or two after the quarterback and really get Joe Burrow to move. And he does, unfortunately for him, have injury history, and
Mm-hmm.
he's seen him even sometimes this season get a little hobbled after taking some hits. So he's a magician. Obviously, if this team has a better record, I think they're talking about him being an MVP candidate. He's
Mm-hmm.
playing that good, and like you mentioned, Jamar Chase, he's an absolute beast. Obviously, the last time we played, he went off quite a bit there, but PS2 has had his games against him, and T Higgins is there as well. But
Mm-hmm.
again, he's another guy. Is he going to be healthy? I don't know. He's had, I believe, a hamstring injury or some kind of lower body injury that's been lingering with him all season. Man, it's always comes back to me to this offense. How are
Yeah.
they going to play? Obviously, the Bengals, like you mentioned, they haven't been good this season, but our weapons, our lack of star power, superstar
Playmakers.
power, kind of makes me like, okay, we're going to bring it back to probably a level playing field here. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what, Ron, what you were saying was kind of convincing to me, man. I think, like just like I said at the Chargers game, this is kind of a coin flip. But honestly, I think the Broncos could have the edge here.
Yeah. And then I'm looking at the rest of the Bengals schedule. They have two matchups still left with the Steelers.
Oh,
So
thanks.
let me pull it up here just briefly. Steelers, Cowboys, that's a win.
Yeah.
Titans, that's a win. They have the Browns, so there's another matchup with the Browns. And like I said, we know how those divisional games are. And then the Broncos game, and then they end with the Steelers. So I don't know, given how those Steelers matchups shake out, like if they'll really be playing for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the Steelers one is after hours, so depending on kind of how it shakes out before they play us,
Mm-hmm.
they may not, they may be sitting there with what 8, 9 losses potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't think that's gonna make it to the playoffs, depending on how the Broncos do, and even how Indianapolis Colts do. So yeah, I just think they have more of an uphill battle to climb. Now, can they run the table? Sure, they have the offense in them, but I just think those Steelers matchups are going to be tough.
Yeah, it's looking a little rough there for them at the end of the
Yeah.
season, and
Hmm.
makes it easier for our road to the playoffs. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And then last but not least, the final divisional matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs.
ooh,
The game that we should have won in Arrowhead. But we won't go down that road this
I
time.
really don't want to.
So I think for this one, I think at this point, Dylan, Kansas City Chiefs are going to be resting a lot of their starters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll have the division locked up. Depending on if their number one seed implications, they might have starters there. But other than that, if the number one seed's locked up, or if they can't obtain the number one seed, and if they already have the division locked up with a number two or number three seed, that they'll more than likely rest the starters. Um, and I see this as a Broncos win. I think the Broncos want to get their get back,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. That special teams blunder, um, and so yeah, come at home, with more than likely a lot on the line for the Broncos. Like, again, they may have to win this to get in, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of depending on how it goes. I do see this as a victory for Denver.
Yeah, barring first seed implications or not, I wouldn't put it past the Chiefs being petty, man. This is a divisional game, and hey, if you could possibly deny the Broncos getting into the playoffs, why not do that? The game was so close, like you mentioned last time, and no doubt this one would be assuming starters play. Do they really want to see Denver in the playoffs, or do they want to kick him to the curb and say, "Hey, go sit on the couch for another year"? It's hopefully they're playing. You're sitting some starters. It's very likely they will. Obviously, the Bills are in contention for the first seed, but their schedule is looking really tough these next 3 games. I believe it's there's the what do you? Oh my god, I just lost my train of thought. I believe, do they play the Steelers and Rams in that stretch?
Yeah, they play the Rams. They have the 49ers. They have the Rams. They have the Lions. They have the Patriots, the Jets, and then the Patriots to end it.
Yeah, so there's 3 games in there where that could be pretty rough. So that might, depending on how well they play in that, they get some wins in there. Kansas City might have pretty, I say, safe road to the playoffs, but they've kept games close, so it's kind of hard either way there.
Yeah, it's it really could go either way, and I think based on what we've predicted though, um, that's so the next 3 are wins, so that gets you at 9-5, and then I predicted so they might be sitting there at a 10-6 record before Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even if Kansas City's a loss, going 10-7, as most of the people in the chat predicted, and given how the Colts and the Colts shake out, I again that'll be the 7th seed. So, but yeah, again, very favorable schedule for your Denver Broncos moving forward. Alrighty. Let's see who else we have. Oh, we're at 50. Ooh, 50. We're on 57 minutes here, so wrap it up here soon, guys. We got Casey coming back in. Thank you, Casey. We appreciate the support, my man. Always appreciate you. He says Denver goes 4-1 in the next 5 games. The L being the Chargers. Yep, that's about how I summed it up too.
Yeah.
I think the Chargers game, Casey, is really the only one that should, cause concern. But it's definitely winnable. Again, how this offense has looked over the past several weeks, it's definitely a winnable game. But again, this Chargers defense, it's tough. But yeah, 4-1 in the next 5 games is definitely possible.
I think anyone would be happy with 4-1 after these next 5 games. I mean, get 10 wins in this season is something a lot of us never even dreamed of. So 4-1 would be absolutely outstanding for a team like this.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you for coming in, Casey, again. And we got Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you for coming back in, Phil. We always appreciate you. He says, I think Knicks may get 300 plus passing yards this week, and running backs could get 100. Dylan, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think Knicks can absolutely get 300 yards. Just kind of depends on the game plan. With the Broncos there, it's obviously their defense isn't anything to write home about. They lost Christian Wilkins pretty early on. And you got Max Crosby, and their corners are so. It really just depends on the game plan. Obviously, the first game they had, Knicks probably should have had another touchdown if Troy Franklin doesn't drop it. I think you could see him air it out and get 300 yards. I definitely think that's in the realm of possibility. And to stack back-to-back weeks as a rookie quarterback, 300 plus yards, that'd be pretty sweet. And in terms of the running backs, again, it kind of does. You could probably get both. I could see that against this defense. Now, who's going to be the lead back? I have no idea. I thought Estime was going to be getting most of the carries last week. Ended up being Javonte, and he looked great. So maybe one of them could get 100 yards. I don't see multiple ones getting 100, but I think there could be a good even split there in the backfield with Javonte, Estime, and then a splash of McLaughlin in there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Yeah, Phil, you're right. I do think it get 300 plus passing yards this week is definitely possible. Looking at the depth chart for the Raiders, the secondary doesn't put any fear in anyone's eye. And I know they have a few injuries on that secondary as well. I believe Bennett is out, Jacorian Bennett. I think he's the corner. Jack Jones is questionable.
Yeah.
So
Nate Hobbs is out.
and Nate Hobbs.
Oof.
So I mean, you got Moreg you may have to be worried about, but I'm not. Again, I'm not too concerned there. And I think Peyton will definitely scheme it up well and put Bo Nix in good passing position. So I don't I don't see that being out of the realm of the possible. And yeah, as far as the running backs, yeah, this depends on who's going to be the you know the bell cow back. Who it seems as though Peyton is kind of really doing it by committee, and whoever he feels is you know the best one to go for that game, he puts them in and let them ride. But um, I know he mentioned that he would like to see Estimate get more carries, and that was the plan moving forward. So hopefully you see that um, to close out the season. Again, I like how Javante's playing. Again, he's gotten better these past few weeks. There's still an issue there, with the vision at times. But I would say I like what I've seen from Javante. So hopefully he can just have one stay in there and they can eclipse that 100-yard rushing mark. But yeah, Phil, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. All right, guys, one more, and then we are going to got to get to a few key injuries, and then we'll get to our predictions. I want to grab this because this is an interesting question here from Canelo. Thank you, Canelo, for coming in. He says, "What's your dream off season for this team?" Dylan, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Since we're running a little late on time here, I'll keep it to one player that I absolutely would love on this team. Uh, I don't know how it would happen. We'd have to trade, probably get him out, but I'm a big fan of Garrett Wilson from the Jets, and
Mm.
seems like they're going to be burning it down despite their best. I don't know if I'd say their best efforts this season, but Garrett Wilson would be absolutely amazing for this offense. He's a truly dynamic receiver. Yeah, you'd probably have to pay him as well as job compensation, but I think he completely alters how this offense works, and he's just a beast all around. And this team needs offensive weapons wherever they can get them.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Um, I'll say let me, I'm gonna give three key positions players. Um, Chris Godwin would do wonders for this offense. Now I know he has that injury. Um, but T Higgins has a long injury history as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris Godwin would just be nice. Just when he's played with the Bucks, he's just been a really solid guy. So I would say sign Chris Godwin in free agency. Um, you, I mean, if somehow, some way, I would love to have a Hassan Reddick. I know we don't really need edge given where we are now. Edge is pretty much kind of solidified in my book, given the emergence of Benito and Cooper. But man, Hassan Reddick's good.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he's good. And draft Tyler Warren.
I like him a lot, actually. Yeah.
Those would be my three wishes for the for the off season. Again, I would like Genty as well, but I think Genty's going to go high and going
Mm-hmm.
to be out of the Broncos from the pick. But I think Tyler Warren should definitely be there. That guy's a beast, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the prototypical tight end for a Sean Payton offense.
Definitely. Yeah. And Lord knows we need one of those.
Yes, for
Maybe
sure.
a few.
Yes. All right, guys. So just to run off these injuries really quickly and get to our predictions. So for the Broncos, Zach Allen is questionable. Hopefully he does play. But yeah, he's questionable right now. And then Josh Reynolds and Drew Sanders are out. The Raiders have a long injury list here. So Jacorian Bennett's out, Harrison Bryant's questionable, Nate Hobbs is out, Andre Jarris is questionable, Jack Jones is questionable, Alexander Madison is doubtful, Zamir White is doubtful, and Cody
Wow.
White here is
Both the
questionable.
running backs.
Yeah,
Yeesh.
yeah. So quite long. They're quite extensive there. All right, Dylan. Score prediction time. Who do you have winning in tomorrow's game?
Well, I think the Broncos have a lot of momentum coming off that astounding win against Atlanta. I thought it'd be a competitive game, but that was not quite what I was expecting in terms of how explosive they were. And I think they continue that explosive offensive onslaught. They're going to beat the Raiders 27-16. I have been thinking about maybe making the score a little higher there just because of what they did against the Falcons, and the Raiders have a significantly worse defense. So I'm going to take the Broncos in this one, 27-16.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, you know, with the Broncos coming off that convincing win against Atlanta, they have to keep this momentum going. And there's no other time, right now where your schedule is very favorable. As I mentioned at the top of the show, that the Raiders are reeling right now. They don't have a good team. The only two people you really have to worry about, Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. And so now I think, looking at the film from the first matchup and how that first half went down, they're going to have a plan for Brock Bowers and kind of limit him, contain him. I think he'll still get his yards and such, but they'll definitely contain him. And they'll have a plan for Max Crosby as well. So with that, I do have the Broncos securing their first victory at Allegiant Stadium. So weird for me to say that. So my pick or my final score are the Denver Broncos 31, the Raiders 13.
Love that.
It's going to be a nice little game for them. Yeah.
First win in a Legion, baby.
Yeah, I know. I know. Finally. About time. About time. All right, guys. Well, that concludes our episode for tonight. Dylan, this hour goes by so quickly. It's always a joy to talk to each and every one of you. We greatly appreciate your insight, your questions, your comments. It really kind of helps us, to moving forward. If you guys haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe, like, and share across all of the platforms. We greatly appreciate it. And if you have not already, make sure you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ron White NFL, and my partner in crime here is at Dylan Vaughn Arts MHH. Before we get out of here, Dylan wants to thank a few of you guys who supported tonight. I'll let Dylan take it over.
Yeah, thank you folks for all joining in tonight. We had an amazing discussion. We're pushing 140 plus viewers tonight. That's awesome to see, especially on a Saturday night. We know a lot of people are out doing things, and it's great that you guys come in and show us some love and give us your time. And a special thanks to a few of you folks who decided to come in and be our Super Chat superstars for tonight. Papa Bear, David McGilrath, as always, Phil McLaughlin, Casey Nichols twice, and Phil again to finish out the pod. Thank you guys so much for your love and support. We would be truly nothing without you guys. You guys make this show run.
Yes, most definitely, you guys. All right. Well, I thank you guys for tuning in once again. We appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy the game tomorrow and go Broncos.
Go Broncos.